In today's video, we're going to be walking through St. Augustine's Lighthouse and Maritime Museum. We've just arrived on the property here and we're approaching the building that houses the gift shop, which is where you purchase your tickets. The Lighthouse is one of my favorite places to visit in Florida, along with St. Augustine itself and also Sarasota's Ringling Museum. I'm only going to be breezing through most of this because I didn't want to make this a real long video. However, I do encourage you to pause the video at different places and read what you can if you're so inclined, especially where the lighthouse is concerned. On each landing, there is something to observe. Tickets are $17.95 for adults, $15.95 for seniors, and I believe it's $12.95 for children. This is actually a pretty nice gift shop. Every time I come here, I buy something. Usually a hat and a t-shirt that go together, and I love wearing them. I've even purchased a hoodie and a wool cap to wear during the colder months. Believe it or not, it does get cold here in Florida. When you do decide to visit the Lighthouse, you would probably be benefited by spending a good 2 hours taking your time, reading everything, soaking in the history, and talking to the people who work here, because they have a lot of good stories to tell. Hi. Jutting off this little path that takes you to the lighthouse, you'll find the Maritime Hammock Trails, where you can discover native plants and animals as you walk through it. And off to the right over here, we have Eliza and Cracker's Little Keepers Club. Eliza and Cracker were the children of one of the lightkeepers here. There's a very interesting and quite funny story about them. And here it is, St. Augustine's big, beautiful lighthouse. And off to my left over here, we have the keeper's house, which we will explore in a little bit. But first, we're going to enter the keeper's office and ascend the winding staircase to take in the glorious view of St. Augustine from the top of the lighthouse. Here we have the oil storage room. The oil would be taken to the top of the lighthouse in a small bucket that you see in the middle of the floor. It would power the 9-foot-tall Fresnel lens, and originally the oil that they used was well lard until they started using kerosene. And this was no small feat. This small bucket, when it had the oil in it, would probably weigh about 35 pounds. They challenge you to try your hand at lifting it. It seems easy at first, but when you consider that you have to climb 219 steps and 14 stories, doing that several times a day, well, you get quite a workout in. Across the hall over here, we have the lighthouse keeper's office, where they stored records of equipment, maintenance, and log books, which are now available to see as a record of what it was like to operate a lighthouse. Now, this is not the original St. Augustine Lighthouse. This just replaced the one that stood before. This was built between 1871 and 1874, but the first one was built in 1824. It was a Spanish watchtower turned into a lighthouse. The original lighthouse eventually fell into the ocean in 1880 because of shoreline erosion. Looking up the staircase, you see what a work of art this is, and this has been photographed many, many times. The lighthouse is 165 feet tall, and I believe it's the second tallest lighthouse in the state of Florida. There are 8 landings as you make your way up, and on each one you'll find some interesting stories, some facts, some history that'll keep you interested on your way up, or at least while you're waiting for others to make their way down. This lighthouse is considered one of the most haunted places in Florida. Visitors and staff have reported hearing children laughing, footsteps on the stairs, shadow figures, and doors opening by themselves. Paranormal investigation shows regularly take place here. 3 young girls tragically died during the construction of this lighthouse. In 1873, the daughters of the construction superintendent and another child drowned when a supply cart they were riding in tipped into the water. Their story is one of the main reasons behind the lighthouse's ghost legends. St. Augustine is resplendent with ghost stories, and given its rich history, it doesn't really surprise me. But personally, I've never seen anything. However, we brought our kids to St. Augustine when they were very, very little. And sometime later, they told me about some figures, some children, some people that they saw in period clothing that no one else seemed to have laid eyes on. We were baffled because it lined up exactly with the ghost stories that the locals were telling us. And if hauntings are your kind of thing, well, you can actually schedule a ghost tour of this lighthouse. Now get a load of this cat with a parachute. There's a funny story regarding the little boy that lived here with his sister, and he had heard that some soldiers were being taught how to jump out of airplanes, and he decided to see if his cat could do the same thing. He took some bed sheets, made a little makeshift parachute out of it, tossed the cat over the side of the railings, and the cat survived. Landed somehow in the trees, disappeared for about a month, returned. Of course, his sister was devastated, and he never told her what he did until 50 years later, and she remained very upset with him. She's still alive, living somewhere in her 90s here in the area, as I'm told. Let's take a look at the lighthouse from the other side of the window. This lighthouse no longer uses a kerosene lamp, but rather a 12,000 candle power electric light. This Fresnel lens is 9 feet tall, has 370 individual prisms, and weighs just about 2 tons. And its light can be seen from up to 19 to 24 nautical miles. As you can probably tell, I am tremendously afraid of heights. What gets me, though, is that I've been up here a handful of times, and after a minute or so of this, I'm kind of used to it and can walk to the railing pretty well. But I couldn't quite shake it this time. In fact, just watching it back now, I'm getting the heebie-jeebies. This lighthouse sure is pretty, isn't it? However, the black and white stripes that you see are not just simply for aesthetics. The pattern is actually called a day mark. It's to help sailors to be able to identify the structure easily during the daytime. And you may wonder if the light still shines at night. Well, yes, it does. The lighthouse remains an active aid to navigation operated by the United States Coast Guard. The beacon still flashes over the coast each night, continuing a tradition that has guided sailors for generations.
He's such a talker.
Oh my God, it's like.
I can't help but look over the side of this thing and wonder what that cat was thinking on his way down.
First one we ever did.
Now we're headed to the part of the tour that's called the Maritime Heritage Park. This section is called Heritage Boatworks. Here you can observe small wooden watercraft built by volunteer boatwrights. I've never seen it going on, but obviously it does, and I think it would be pretty interesting to watch. And over here we have a World War II era garage turned into an eatery called the Tin Pickle. Now pay close attention because this is a model of the original St. Augustine lighthouse. What we have here is a World War II U.S. Coast Guard quarters. Inside, you can discover St. Augustine's role in World War II and the threat of Nazi submarines off the coast.
Operation Drumbeat was the German name for the U-boat offensive in 1942, part of the larger Battle of the Atlantic. In April of 1942, the U-boat U-123, commanded by Reinhard Cardigan, found itself underwater on the sandy ocean floor off the St. Augustine shore. The U-boat 123 had been patrolling St. Augustine waters, cruising back and forth, typically from Marine Land to the south to Milano Beach or so to the north, always keeping the St. Augustine Lighthouse in visual sight. Typically, the U-boat would hide underwater during the day and stalk.
Now it's time to go inside and see what a 19th century lightkeeper's house looked like.
You been down there yet?
You going?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Pinpoint the exact location, and then we will clear off an area, and then
Down here in the basement, you can learn about underwater archaeology and about shipwrecks from the American Revolution. Some of the stuff they have on display here are pretty cool if you take the time to look at them. I'm having to mute this part because of copyrighted music. On the television show Ghost Hunters, Grant claimed to be able to see somebody looking back at him from inside one of these two holes. My camera's not really made for low light like this, but I simply did this because I could, I guess. I can't help but look at the artifacts that you see in here and think to myself that underwater archaeology has got to be one of the most exciting and gratifying things to do. I guess once you find something, right? Get it all cleaned up, restored. To make contact with history like this would just make all those history books come to life in a way like no other. So here we are at the end of our tour, and I wanted to show you guys the front grounds of the Lightkeeper's house. This is absolutely beautiful. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this. I thank you for watching. Check out all my other videos. Like this if you can. It would certainly help me. I guess I'll see you guys in the next one.